Welcome to another episode of the White Collar Tradie Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Zebranik. Join me as I chat with some of the most interesting, inspirational and successful people I've been fortunate enough to meet throughout my life and through my business journey. Throughout these conversations, we'll dive into the mindset of our guests and uncover some of the tips, tools and strategies they have implemented in their business and their life that has helped shape their success and make them the all-round incredible humans they are. Please enjoy. All right, man. I'm just going to go.
Let's go.
All right, let's go. All right, my guest today on the White Collar Tradie Podcast is Matt King. Matt is the Managing Director of URPS. Now, is it URPS?
It's URPS. Yeah, you got that right.
Okay,
Yeah.
URPS. Can I say URPS or should I say
You can
URPS?
say URPS. We don't mind. Yeah.
And was recently announced as one of inDaily's 40 Under 40 award winners. I thought you'd like me to mention that. You happy with that?
I didn't think you knew that, but I'm glad that you mentioned it now, just so the world knows again. Thank you.
So what does URPS stand for, just quickly?
Urban and Regional Planning Solutions.
Solutions. Okay,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was services or solutions. Thank you.
It was too long. We
Yeah.
had to make it shorter.
So when you talk to people, do you say, I work, I'm the Managing Director of URPS, or do you...
URPS.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, I'll call it URPS.
Yeah.
Mate, I think just for a bit of context, can we start from roughly the start? Because I'd like to just speak about maybe your early career and then that move that we spoke about when we had a coffee, when you did that sort of, I guess, the big move from the government
Yeah.
into the private sector.
Yeah.
Can you let us know a bit about your background?
So I started working in 2006 full-time after studying planning at UniSA.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked at the City of Burnside, which had a pretty good reputation, I think, internally, but externally, Burnside Council had not a great reputation because of the council and the way that some of the councillors had behaved publicly, I think. But internally, the culture was great working there, and learned a lot about planning quickly. There's a lot of litigation happening between, I've used that word early,
Yep.
between landowners, and I got exposed to lots of challenging planning issues and development issues early in my career. So it's a good learning ground. But I always had an appetite to get into business. My dad had sort of been involved in business, and I'd been around small business from a young age. So I was keen to get into business, and then I got an opportunity to go and work at a small private firm 2008, I think. And I worked there for about 4.5 years, and then we merged with URPS. So I got consumed by this other firm. Luckily, I knew of them. I knew one of the directors there, and I liked him. So the relationship was good, and it was a really good fit. We kind of complemented my old firm, and the group that came over complemented the URPS crew, and it was a really good fit. So. The last 10 years there has been great for us.
Yep. So you worked in the government sector for only 2 years, 2006 to 2008.
Yeah.
So when people move from the public sector into the private sector like you did, what are the main differences? And did anything take you by surprise?
I think the biggest adjustment for me was the high degree of accountability. Mm-hmm. And I guess that when you're in a public environment, you're not, there's different levels of accountability, but you don't have clients paying for your time. So the quality of your work I think when people are paying an hourly rate for your work, the quality has to be exceptional always. There's minimal margin for error. And, people want things done when you say you're going to do them. Mm-hmm. I think in government world, I think there can be a tendency to kind of, and there's some really good people in government, but there can be a tendency to kind of duck and weave a little bit. So that accountability in private practice was the biggest difference. And the consistency in terms of quality of work. Mm-hmm. My old bosses, they had minimal, I think, tolerance for poor work. And that was hard early because my work was very average. And I had to grow up, and I had to deal with getting feedback that I didn't want to hear. I think I knew I needed to hear it, but when people tell you that your work isn't any good, and you're young and you're sensitive, it's hard. Yeah. So I think that teaches you to grow up really quickly. Mm-hmm. and that sort of made me stronger. So I think being exposed to that was good, and I think in private practice as well, you know, the management side of things is different. I think people have to be honest with their staff. You know, I think, and I think that's a good thing. So I enjoyed the change, even though it was hard.
Yeah,
I don't regret it.
So what did you learn, I guess, from, because next I'm going to touch on you know, moving through URPS, but when you spoke about giving, you know, it hurt you to get some of that feedback, what did you learn from that, and how do you implement that now with your staff? Like, you know, do you think there's a better or best way to give feedback that you've learnt from those harsh realities?
I think how you deliver feedback is important. You know, I think there was a tendency, I think it was a generational thing, just to say that's not good enough. We really try to couch it in a positive and constructive way, and we try to explain it's not just it's not good enough, you know, go and fix it. Go and work on the weekend and fix it. It's kind of, this can be better if you do the following.
So making it more constructive.
I think the era, and it's not that long ago. I'm not like, hey, I'm 60. I'm in the 1970s. I'm talking only 15 years ago. But I think things have changed even in that period, though. Whereas how you deliver feedback is really constructive and positive. I think for me, I think the big thing that we want to see, though, is improvement and people making the effort to get better.
Yeah.
I think the things that I learned was putting in. I mean, we when I first got into private practice, I learned quickly that you have to do a little bit extra to get better. You can't just expect to rock up at 9 o'clock and, you know, go home at 5:05. There's a period where you've got to roll your sleeves up and work harder, and you would have seen that in your career. And that makes you better as well. But when you're not there technically, I think there's a period in your career when you've got to go hard and get better by working harder. So those tough periods are good. They strengthen you and make you better.
Definitely.
Even though you don't like them at the time.
That is a good point, eh? Like, it's always uncomfortable at the time, eh? And then you look back and they're the things that make you better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you run us through, I guess, your move through URPS? You know, where you started and how you got to your position now as managing director.
When I first got there, I was part of the team. We were about 14 as a firm at the time, and you know, I was in a technical role of advising clients, writing planning reports, lodging DAs for the Zubrinich family at the Riverland, and getting planning approvals.
Yep.
I had to sort of work hard to get. I had kind of a new audience there, so there was a bit of trying to impress some new colleagues and some new directors. So I kind of just put my head down and worked really hard in the first 12 to 18 months. A couple of years in, I think they offered me a role to be a director there and be a partner there. So I bought shares in the business and became a director. And I became part of the management team probably 7 or 8 years ago now. And then the management team decided it was time to refresh its leadership. So I got the opportunity. I think they were looking. It was about trying to refresh and get someone a bit younger in that role. So I got the opportunity to become managing director. I think it was 4 years ago now. And we've done a lot in that period. Terms of growth of the business. So I said that when I got there we were about 14, and we're 35 now, with offices in Adelaide and Melbourne.
Yeah, sick. You know, your roles change from, like you said, the more technical to now. I guess now you're more looking at a more holistic business. Yeah. Sort of. Are you still in the trenches as well, doing the tech stuff? Can you still afford to do that, or?
Yeah, there's a balance for me. I've got clients who I still work with, who I've worked with for a long time, and I stay involved in their projects. And I've got management duties, so I dance between the two. The tricky thing, Matt, is trying to stay across a growing client base whom have come to URPS, and in some instances have come to me to do the work.
Yeah.
But I can't do all the work. So we've been really good, I think, as a firm, and we've been, I wouldn't say lucky because it's been targeted, but we've recruited the right people. So I'm able to then, kind of go, well, I can't do this, you can do it. And then once clients build connectivity with your team members and they like them, you don't become as important, and you can then grow your firm that way. So we've been, I think recruitment's been a strength of our firm.
Yeah.
So yeah, staying involved a little bit, but not on every single project anymore. Just managing it through, good delegation and good recruitment.
How are you seeing the pipeline of people, that you are available at the moment for you guys? Because I mean, everyone I think is tough out there. And I do have a question later around, how you guys have done so well around recruiting. But before we get to that point, what is it like? What's the pool of people coming through?
Yeah,
like
it's
in
hard.
Your world?
So the planning degree in South Australia hasn't been operating, I think, for a couple of years now, maybe 2 or 3 years. There's a pathway through Adelaide Uni, but the traditional undergraduate through University of South Australia isn't offered at the moment. So we were getting, 15 to 20 grads coming out of uni SA every year. And that had happened, I think, since maybe mid-70s or something like that. So to not have that has meant that we've had to look elsewhere, including Victoria, for some of our more recent recruits.
Yep.
So being a little bit creative with recruitment, I'm hopeful that the merger, the mooted university merger, will bring a planning degree, which is a portfolio that sits in the government, and clearly an important part of the state government's agenda. I'm hopeful that the merger will bring planning back online as a course that's offered here.
Yep.
And then we can start getting some recruits.
Yep.
It's also about, I think, education as well. Like, is planning sold well to high school kids? So people that are going, I'm going to go in engineering, I'm going to go architecture, I want to get into construction. There's a lot of people moving into those, or land surveying. Is there enough people going, actually, I might do planning out of that pool of people in the kind of family of, landscape architecture? There's all these graduates doing similar things, are enough going into planning. So I think there might be some work to do around whether the Planning Institute is selling planning to high school kids enough.
If you were talking, if a high school kid is watching this, what do you think is the wicked parts about planning?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it flies under the radar a little bit. The most exciting thing that we get to do is deal with a variety of people and see a variety of things. So as a planner, you can literally wake up one morning and be dealing with a developer about a 15-storey hotel in the city. Or you can be driving to Morgan to help someone get an approval for a shack.
Yep.
Or you could be flying to Coober Pedy to be doing a land division. Or you could be going to Mount Gambier to deal with, some other kind of regional development. Or working in wine regions with tourism operators. I'm helping Pizza Teca do more work down at McLaren Vale. We get involved and understand so many different businesses and development outcomes. So the variety of things you get to see and do I think it's an awesome thing about planning.
Yeah, variety, that's key. So you became director 4 years ago? A director 4 years ago? Is that right? Roughly?
About 7. Managing director 4 years ago.
Managing director 4 years, okay.
Yep.
So this might be hard to answer, but can you summarise some of the biggest business lessons you've had over that time that's helped you level up to where you are now?
Biggest business lessons?
Hard to think of on the spot sometimes, I know, but...
Yeah, I think probably... I think we've gotten better at recruitment. I think we've been really good as a firm, but I think we've learned now. I think we know what a good employee for URPS looks like, and it goes beyond technical skills. I think there's technical skills, there's kind of interpersonal skills, but there's also kind of company values and fit for our culture. And I think in the past we've been okay at that, but I think now we're clear about what we want. Because I think we know what we are more than ever. So I think one of the big things that I've learned is actually working on your company values, like being super clear about why Plumbify is different to your competitor is one of the biggest things that you could do for your business. And then having a clear plan for your growth. So clarity internally and then execution. You have to have a clear plan for what you want to be. You've got to know who you are in the first place. So I think we know that more than ever because we spend a lot of time thinking about it and talking about it. That helps with your recruitment because you know what you're looking for and you become quite targeted with your recruitment. Yep.
Can you touch on those values?
We've got 4 values. I won't explain all of them in detail. I think the biggest ones for us is we're relationship builders. So we work really hard. You could sort of scratch that into a DJ there on strong relationships internally and externally. We work hard to build strong rapport with stakeholders in government. So when we've got an issue, we can pick up the phone and we can communicate our position professionally and hopefully productively. We also talk about turning towards the community, not away from it. So when we're doing a development and we get public objections, our approach will be, let's talk to the neighbours, let's contact them, let's sit down, let's see if we can resolve this to then facilitate a quicker approval, but hopefully some degree of harmony between landowners. We think it's a better planning outcome. But it does require you to be brave to talk to them and see if there's a middle ground. So that's another corporate value of ours as well. And we try to be inclusive as a firm. We accept all backgrounds and we try to recruit to create diversity internally. And we've been really targeted at trying to create good, inclusive and diverse culture as well.
Yeah. Well, so what's the flip side of, you're saying you're... more consulting with the community. You said it better. But I mean, how would a usual, what's the negative side of that? Yeah, the alternative side of that, I guess, like how do other people approach it? What they just, they don't care, obviously, and they don't consult and they just keep, this is what it is, this is what we want, or what's the alternative?
The alternative is you just proceed henceforth and you ignore the noise from anyone that's affected by a development. That model, there can be instances where that model might have merit, but I think from our perspective, why wouldn't you pick up the phone and talk to people?
Yeah.
Because sometimes things that can be resolved quite easily. Like we had a neighbour who wrote like a 5-page representation recently. I won't say where it is. About a development, and it had all these things in there. And actually, all they wanted to do was talk to someone about the problem, and they wanted a fence paid for. And I said, well, that's fine. The fence will cost, $4,000 or something, and they wanted a tree. It was sort of like all these little things. Now, if you read the letter, you would have thought that they wanted to go to war. Right. But the simple outcome of the conversation was that they wanted, a fence and some landscaping. So I think now sometimes they won't want to talk to you, and that's fine. But the positive thing of talking to them is you might go, geez, that was pretty easy to sort out. So I think, that's where we say it's always worth doing.
So is an important skill as a planner seems like you have to be a good negotiator.
I think it's helpful if you're a good negotiator. It's not a core skill, but it's really helpful. I think within that though, being able to communicate with it like a bunch of different humans is going to be a good thing. If you kind of know how to be a bit of a chameleon, change the personality and adapt to different situations as well, that's going to help you think on your feet and find the right way to interact and communicate with different people.
Could you summarise the core skills of what is I mean, not every one of them kingy, but
it's
like
intuitive, I think, a little bit.
of a good planner, you know, versus I don't know, not so good one. But what is the skill set of the
I think there's a
standouts
few
have?
different ways to do the job.
Mm.
I think at the core of it, you have to have sound comprehension skills. You've got to be able to read policy, interpret what it means, and then write something about it.
Yeah.
So your English has to be good.
Mm.
If you can understand drawings, that's important. I would say that's pretty
Yeah.
critical. Because you've got to be able to communicate what's happening on plans into words.
Yeah.
So it's understanding legislation, reading plans, and communicating in writing, but also verbally.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think you could apply that to lots of careers, couldn't you?
Yeah. Interpretation, that's actually that's a skill that not everyone has that skill, man. That's, you know what I mean? That's a good skill to have.
Yeah, you don't need to be good with tools, though, thankfully.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't make it in plumbing, I don't reckon.
Definitely not.
I'm going to move on to URPS, URPS in a minute, sorry. Can I ask you just a personal question?
Otherwise you'll hear from our lawyers.
Litigations.
Yeah, that's right.
Can I ask you just a personal question? Is like, because I'm interested to know. Is like, could you say what drives you personally and maybe professionally as well?
Personally driven by the problem solving of business. Like, I think that's a problem solving clients' issues. I love doing that. I love helping them get what they need. So when you want to do a land development, I always ask you what your objectives are. It's not about the planning issues for me. Like, they are things that we'll need to deal with, but the core of it is you've got a situation, whether it's to make money or you want to do a development because you want to leave a legacy in the Riverland or whatever you're doing. I kind of want to understand what people's motivations are and then help solve the problem. So I love the problem solving. That's really motivating for me. And then I love the problem solving in business. Like, okay, our brand needs to be refreshed. What do we want it to be? We need to get more work in this area. How are we going to do it? Yeah, that's a real motivating thing for me, more so than the kind of technical detail of planning. I've done that for a while. And I still enjoy little bits of that, but the things that really get me out of bed is the kind of problem solving and the relationships I've got with clients.
Yeah. Yeah, so business is basically just, when you're a business managing director, your just job is to solve problems every day. And that's how I look at it, basically.
I guess I'm also motivated by paying for school fees and feeding kids.
That always is a definite motivation.
Practical reality of earning money and, supporting a family has come to effect. So,
Now, mate, I obviously want to touch on the 40 under 40 award, and I guess I want to know what it means to you. And my question around that is, because the award is awarded to people the judges believe are going to be future leaders over a long period, and I think they're pretty clear on that. And I want to know what that means to you, and I guess what you want to achieve, what you would like to achieve over a long period, because that award is awarded to those people who they believe are going to be future leaders. So what does that mean to you?
It's interesting when you frame it that way, because I've been a part of this business for a while and have been in a leadership role for a while, and we've spent a lot of time as a business working hard to get to where we've got to. I feel that the award is recognition for me personally, driving positive change at URPS, but I also can't help but think that my business partners have been a big factor in me getting the award, because it's recognition for what I've done at URPS with tremendous support from my business partners. So they've been really helpful in supporting me. Where do I take the opportunity of where I'm at now? What do we do in the future? That's really exciting. We've got plans to keep growing URPS, so we want to be bigger than what we are now, but we don't just want to be bigger. It's not just about the simple goal of growth. It's about being a better firm. A big theme for us is about growing our intellectual capacity and becoming a more complete and rounded firm. So Why is that important in the context of that award? I think planning has a great ability to influence the community positively, because good development will make communities better. Adelaide is such a great city because it's so livable.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of comes down to a few things, that we're blessed geographically in terms of our climate and all that stuff. But it was actually planned really well. The town planning of Adelaide was excellent.
Mm-hmm.
We started with a great framework. So I think it's important for the planners of Adelaide to keep living the values of Colonel Light and ensure that it continues to be a great place to live. So I think for me, it's like, well, we've got this great firm that I'm lucky to be a part of. Let's increase its influence on Adelaide. Let's make it bigger, and let's keep making Adelaide a great place to live. So a lot of that motivation comes down to like what we've got as an awesome city.
Mm.
And I love selling. When I go to Melbourne for business, I always sell to people the opportunities to do development back in Adelaide. So I think it's good for them to go, you know, let's do some stuff over here. We've got clients from Melbourne that do work in Adelaide now, and they can't believe the potential that this city has in terms of growth opportunities and livability. So, you know, I want to be a leader at URPS, but also a leader that can kind of help keep selling Adelaide beyond South Australia.
Yeah, that's a wicked answer, man. Is South Road included in your answer in regards to they planned it really well?
It's easy to get to McLaren Vale now, so we can't complain about that.
It is. You sort of touched on it before that you guys have done, I guess, it seems from the outside looking in pretty exceptionally in regards to the recruiting in this really tough labour market. And I guess I wanted to ask you, you know, how do you nurture and build up your junior staff differently to maybe what you used to do or what others do? Like, how do you guys look at that? Because obviously that's the future of the growth of the company. Well, a lot of it comes down to that.
Yeah, I think culture is a big thing. So like people wanting to work at our firm hasn't happened overnight. It's about the firm kind of behaving well for a long time.
Yeah.
If the people at the firm behaved strangely externally, then I don't think people would have wanted to come and work there in the first place. So I think a strong thing for any company, right, brand, Kathmandu, Plumbify, whatever, is you want your team to behave in a certain way so other people go, I kind of want to go there. They seem fun. They seem really good at what they do. They love what they do, and they seem fun to be around. I want to be a part of that team. Yep. So I think it starts from what you do. It's not like recruitment works because you just go out and do lots of job ads and pay recruitment companies. It starts from creating, and URPS did it before I got there. It had a good culture, and we've kept developing it. But it starts from the core being good, and people going, I really want to go work there. It seems like a great place, great people, passionate about what they do.
Yep.
That's the key. I think that's the key thing. The other things are peripheral but still important. How you sell yourself online, having an Instagram, having good LinkedIn content, having a good logo, having a nice office. All these things are good. They kind of add to the desire to go work there. Yep. But the core starts from, do the people care about the work that they do, and do they like working there, and are they passionate and energized about being together as a firm? Because that will create an infectious culture that people will just go, yes, let's go. Yep. Can I start tomorrow?
And that is, we're trying to do the same thing, and I know from experience it's like that sort of thing doesn't happen overnight. Hey, and it's a company you constantly got to always be working on, is that building the culture.
Yeah.
It's like a momentum thing. I look at it as well. It's like you start off small and then you can get like a freight train of momentum in a way, but it takes constant work.
It's sort of I think the culture of a firm, it evolves. So like, and you're always changing. It's always kind of changing a little bit, and you go, all right, we're sort of heading in this direction too much. Let's bring it back here. You've got to keep working on it. You don't just go, oh, I've got a great culture now, we'll go do something else for 10 years and then come back and... You know, it needs constant attention.
It does. And you just mentioned offices before. you guys are moving into the heart of Adelaide.
Have I mentioned that we're moving to a new office soon?
Well, I'd like to know, the reasoning, because we had that coffee that day, and it was really interesting to hear why you really want and thought it was important at this stage of the firm to move more centrally.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
I think the interesting thing as well is between when we first spoke about moving office to now, which was 5 years ago, is there's been a global pandemic and people have stopped going into the office spaces around the world. So halfway through it, everyone went, why are we doing this? Yeah. Don't we just want to have URPS as some remote company that everyone just logs onto Teams every Monday and we'll go, all right, see you next week?
Yeah.
And those discussions were had. I think that hasn't affected us as much here as it has happened in Victoria, for example, and I'm sure other big cities around the world where people are still working from home predominantly. We have a little bit of a guide around people. We try to get people into the office because if I come back to the culture thing, those relationships don't get harnessed as well, in my view, if you're not around people.
Yep.
It's hard to be connected. You don't get the random conversations you get at a coffee machine if you're not working in the same office together.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me I think being in the city is good because it's central. It's a simple geographic decision of, Adelaide's kind of fairly balanced. It's got like suburbs all around this central CBD area. Mm-hmm. So I think geographically it made sense. A lot of our clients are in the city, so it made sense from a marketing perspective. It's environmentally kind of smart because you've got public transport and, better access to, you can take a scooter ride, you can walk to meetings. So we're a firm that talks about the environment, but then if we're in the suburbs and people have to drive there, it just didn't sort of line up with our values. And I think finally it was about, let's get some really nice digs so people talk about, I want to go work there because they're good people and they're good at what they do. But the office is kind of a bit crappy. It was like, I don't want the office to be a bit crappy anymore. I want the office to be a part of the picture.
It's a holistic thing, isn't it? The
recruitment is, that's a nice place to go and work as well and do business. Mm-hmm. So that was a driver for us.
Yep. Yeah. How is that coming along as well?
We're moving in on the 24th of July. Oh. So we did hand over
2 weeks basically
this morning from our builder, Fora.
Yeah, nice. Shout out
for Nick Dubois. Did a great job.
How's it look?
Prosky Architects did a great job. Another shout out.
Shout out.
Paid for comment. It looks exceptional. We're super proud and excited to show the team. Some of the team have seen some photos, but they'll get in there and hopefully they'll be blown away.
Do you have any planning problems getting it through?
Fully compliant.
What's the vibe, Kingy?
Architecturally?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good question. It's kind of like it's a contemporary office, but it has a warmth to it. So there's like lots of timber and there's carpet areas, and you have to come.
Yeah, please.
Get an invite.
Yep, I'll drop you the USB that you can review, and I'll drop it to the office.
Yeah.
I've got a question around obviously I've got a couple of situational questions around planning I'd like to ask because I'm interested, so that's why I'm asking them.
Go for it.
Yeah. I'm gonna might read it a bit. But
we'll start invoicing from now on.
I guess I'd like to understand what's the process when like an individual or a developer or like a conglomerate of people come to you and they like really want to push the boundaries of what's achievable in building planning and I guess also a policy perspective. And I'd like to understand like how you guys in particular and yourself tackle those difficult jobs where you really need to push the boundaries.
Yeah, good question.
Thank you.
I think we're always really honest with people about the risk profile. So when people say I want to put a 100-story building on this block, get an approval, I like to say to people, sort of facetiously a little bit, but there's more chance of you kind of winning $1 million on a roulette table this afternoon than that getting approved.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me it's about, if you're going to spend lots of money on trying to get a development approved, I need to make them understand what the risks are. Because I don't think there's any value in us just taking money off people and just kind of randomly lodging all these DAs that are not going to get approved. So we try to be realistic with people about the risk, and then I think they make the decision then to go, okay, let's sort of tone it down a bit to a point where we go, we can run with that. That kind of makes sense to us. It's never going to be, you don't get us involved when it's, like a fully compliant 4x6 shed in Modbury on a flat block of land. We don't get involved in those things. So there's always going to be tricky DAs that we get involved in. Or I think yours was under the non-complying process under the old system. You kind of have to get a planner for that stuff because someone has to explain why it's acceptable. Most of our jobs have got challenging planning issues. When they're too challenging and the chance of getting an approval is so slim, people end up making their own decision not to proceed, because I think we're really clear in saying the risks are so great, it's not good use of your money or time pursuing it. And let them make the call. Like, I don't think most sensible people go, yeah, fair enough, let's do something different. let's go for 10 dwellings instead of 5,000 on that block of land.
And so when you speak about risk, are you like essentially talking about the risk of it just being totally like rubber stamped as a no, or having so many different modifications? You're going to enter this extended kind of negotiation period with the council or the state government to the point where you're going to end up changing it anyway. So we would say to people the better thing to do is to kind of get it close to an acceptable version at lodgement rather than spending months flogging a dead horse, so to speak. So how important is it? I guess you sort of answered it before, but I guess I'm guessing from the outside looking in that it's really important for you to have really good relationships with those external stakeholders like the SA government and the council. Like, how do you look at that? Like,
we do. We always try to we try to foster them through respectful interactions and being good professional people. And it doesn't mean that we don't have robust discussions, though. Like, they don't agree. Councils and state government won't necessarily agree with everything that we say, and I understand that, but it's how we approach it. We focus on the issues, and we'll always do our best to present robust, technically sound planning arguments. If we disagree, that will happen sometimes, and we'll just we'll communicate that back to our client and hopefully find a middle ground. But I think you have to just focus on the issues.
So you sometimes seems like you might have to remove yourself like emotionally from some, I guess, jobs in a way, because like emotionally you might be like, mate, this makes total sense, why can't this go through? But you're also having to balance the fact that you're working on like legislation that is legislation. How do you go about removing yourself emotionally from some of these things? Do you ever have to do that?
I think so. I mean, you have to be professional, I think. Like, there's no point spitting the dummy if someone doesn't agree with you. The policies in planning are subjective, so disagreement is common. It's not uncommon. It's common because they're flexible policies that you and I could read and interpret slightly differently. Having a disagreement or not sort of getting them on board getting a council on board straight away with a development that we lodge is not uncommon when you're in that environment of subjective policy.
That interpretation, it's like AFL.
But do you put your feelings... Absolutely, you keep your feelings out of it as much as you can.
Definitely. Your personal perspective and URPS as well. What's important in town planning over the next, say, 20 years from a sustainability standpoint, and where do we need to be better?
Well, you're going the big questions now, aren't you?
Yeah, man. We're getting bigger and bigger.
I think planning has a role to play in the housing affordability crisis, but that's challenging. It's not just planning that can affect that. Planning has a role to play in trying to facilitate affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's other factors, there's other government factors in that as well. From a sustainability standpoint, I think public transport infrastructure can be better. I think of when we grew up in Modbury, getting around the place. You had the O-Bahn connecting us to the city, but the public transport in that whole Teacher Gully Council area and the connectivity was pretty limited.
Yeah.
It was inefficient as well. Catching multiple buses from places would take a long time, to the point where you'd go, you know what, I'm just going to drive.
Yeah.
I'll just drive from Golden Grove to the city. It's easier because I don't want to catch 3 buses from here to here to here, So I think, is the public transport the best it can be? Maybe not. I think some infrastructure expenditure in that space would be good. I think increasingly more apartment buildings are a better. It's a better living format to reduce our use of the motor vehicle, and that's been the trend of the state government. Has been, let's build more apartments so people can live in the city. Mm-hmm. So you can walk to work, you can walk to the pub after work, you can walk home. You don't need a car. You can live in the city.
Yep.
It's probably, we're not quite there yet. People still live in an apartment and own a car, but if they have that lifestyle, they're not driving as much. Mm-hmm. So the move to building apartments was a big move that the government played here, 10 or 15 years ago with rezoning land. Mm-hmm. That will keep happening. I think there'll be a trend over time in that, in terms of living in that way for South Australians moving forward.
Yeah, because it seems like at the same, from my looking at it, we are trying to move up and close, but also at the same time there is heaps of developments, like we are moving further and further out as well. How's that balance work like? Because the two are like opposing ways of looking at it, I suppose.
I think there's still that traditional desire to live in a single story house with a double garage and a backyard and have a barbecue on a Sunday. There's still that living format, and not everyone can afford that in the current Metro Adelaide area. So land releases happen, and there's a proportion of society that will want to live in a traditional sort of quarter-acre block arrangement. I think there's the current state government are saying there's a balance to be struck between the two, and it would seem that there's demand for it. I think that's okay. I think the key is going, are we rezoning the right land for land development? If the land has, excellent agricultural attributes or is subject to flooding or it's very steep, maybe that land shouldn't be rezoned. So you've got to be, I'm talking really generally here, but you have to be really careful about when you rezone land, picking the right sites for residential development. But it would seem that there's still a demand for both apartment living format. I don't think everyone's embraced living in an apartment in Adelaide yet. I think there's going to take, but I think we've started to see a trend of big apartment construction on East Terrace in Adelaide. So people downsizing from the bungalow in Tusmore, going, you know what, we kind of want an apartment, but we don't want to go into a small apartment. We want to have all the the volume and space that we've got in our bungalow in Tusmore in an apartment. So we've worked on some really high-end apartments that have got, high floor ceilings, good storage areas, parking spaces in a basement car park, and kind of 2, 3, 4 bedroom apartments with generous living areas. That's a kind of interesting development model, I think, moving forward, is offering that higher density living, but some of the attributes that people have enjoyed living in, in Adelaide for a long time. Like
a bit more hybrid. It's like...
A little bit. It's almost like a house in the air.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like big balconies, really big balconies, enough space that you can put a, outdoor dining area, barbecue, pot plant, create a nice environment for people. So I think, they've done that really well in Melbourne in particular. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of that kind of high density living, but done to a standard where people are going, I'm happy to leave the kind of bungalow in Tusmore or whatever and move to the city, which is ultimately good for the environment because they can walk everywhere, and you're reducing the motor vehicle use.
Yeah, definitely. What you spoke about some of the apartments and that you've just worked on recently, or these projects. I'd like to hear just some of the more challenging and rewarding projects that you and URPS have worked on.
Yeah,
I know some notable ones.
We're working on. You'll like this one, given you're a golfer or an okay golfer.
No, not very good.
We're working on a major project at the Stirling Golf Course. So we're working with a Melbourne development company, and they're developing a hotel, day spa, tourist cabin, restaurant, the whole package.
Yeah, nice.
Resort facility. It will be rebranded as the Mount Lofty Golf Resort, and it's going to be an awesome development. It's currently going through planning. It's been designated as a major project. So that's a really cool project. I love golf, so I'm really thankful that they came to us. It's been a fun project to work on.
Yeah.
But a super high profile development. We're also working on the aquatic centre development, so we're working on the planning on behalf of the state government. Massive development, redeveloping what's there, a new facility, one that will be enjoyed by South Australians for the next 30 to 50 years or longer. And we're also working on a development for MAB, which is a Melbourne developer in Brompton, the Brompton Gasworks site, and a significant infill development there with townhouses and apartments and activation of heritage spaces and the like. So yeah, there's some current ones that we're working on.
Yep.
Historically, the firm's done a whole bunch of things. When the thing for me is I've actually had the most fun. I've worked on a whole bunch of like apartment buildings, and I got a 13-story apartment building approved in Glenelg yesterday up for a really good client.
Boom.
And those things are great fun. That'll be an awesome project. But I think for me, I have just as much fun and enjoyment getting that result for that client as I do helping out a kind of mum and dad trying to do their dream home in Malvern or Unley or whatever they're doing, holiday shack somewhere. So it's exciting and fun and interesting intellectually to work on big projects. The relationships and the interpersonal kind of back and forth that we have with clients on small stuff is where I've always enjoyed at my role as a technical planner, and still enjoy that.
That answers my next question a little bit. What's do you get involved much once it's been stamped? Do you go to site and check out the builds and stuff like that?
Not a lot. And I think the interesting thing, I was talking about this to someone yesterday, is that there's so many things that we've got planning approval for that never actually get built.
Really?
Which is just the nature of development. Like, it just doesn't always... We're at the front end of a very long process. And after a plan has been endorsed, it then has to be costed. What's it going to cost to build? How much revenue we're going to generate from the office space or the apartments or whatever.
Yeah.
If that doesn't work, then then our client has to come back to us to go, well, hang on, we need to get 2 more stories, or we need to completely change this whole thing, right? So it's not unusual for us to get an outcome and then it kind of comes back, because once some of the numbers have been crunched, it has to be amended.
Yeah.
Things that have got built though, like I'll always go and look at them if I can. I think it's good because you can see whether the things that you thought were going to be problems were or not, and you can learn a lot from sort of post-construction site inspection. So I try to do that a lot, because otherwise you don't really learn. A lot of what we do is kind of estimating and speculating on the potential effects of a development through drawings.
Yeah.
Nothing tells you what the reality of the situation is like until you go and look at it.
Definitely.
So I don't think I've done that enough historically, but increasingly I'm interested in doing that more.
There you go, there's an improvement for you.
Bang.
Future plans for URPS, like I think you sort of touched on it before, but are you guys looking to be the biggest, the best, niche, the most sought after? You know, what are you and your business partners' ambitions for the business?
That's a good question. I think it's continued growth, and it's about growing in size because we think we can. We want to keep doing what we do to more people because we think what we do is really good. So it's about increasing our influence. We think that we can be better as well in lots of areas. So it's it's physical growth, but also intellectual growth in the firm. So I think for us, it's about not just getting bigger and just employing anyone. It's about employing more good people, more great people to get better at what we do and keep servicing our clients really well. So it's kind of two-pronged. It's not just about expansion. We've got, I think the other thing I've touched on Melbourne is our Melbourne firm is relatively young and small. So the plans to make that bigger and kind of transpose what we've done here into another city is really exciting. The way the internal culture that we've got, trying to create something similar over there, the behaviours and values of our consultants and how we service our clients, trying to transpose that to another city and be successful. I'm really excited about doing that in Melbourne. Melbourne's a great city in terms of doing business. It's easy to get to, it's quick. Some of the cultural stuff is similar, you know, weather, footy, coffee. It's relatable for us. So we've found, and I think we share a lot of clients in Victoria, in Adelaide. So it's been an easier place for us to do business than other cities around Australia.
Is there any challenges in regards to moving, you know, the business to another state? Like, do you have to, in regards to like licensing or any of those types of things?
How long have you got?
A bit longer. Because I'm interested because that's one of my goals, and I just wanted to know what it's like from your business perspective.
I think starting a business in another city that you've never worked in before is basically like doing an MBA, a crash course in business. It's like a free MBA. It's like, here's 100 problems that you never thought you were going to deal with before. Go and solve them. So, yeah, like it is super hard, but the problem solving of creating of dragging this thing that you've got here that's pretty good and then plonking it somewhere else is really hard. So I think what we've learned over in Melbourne has been powerful for us in Adelaide. Because we kind of know all the things that haven't worked over there and how to do them better here. Also, I think the other thing is trying to sell to people that don't know you. It's easier for you to sell your business in Adelaide because you're connected and you know people and you're confident and you feel you have a high degree of trust that people will kind of use you because you're known in your industry here. When you go to another city, they go UPRS, they say your name wrong. They kind of don't even know who you are. So you're starting from, like, you're at ground zero when you go over there, and that's hard. But that's the great thing about it, is how hard it is. You have to, like, get back on that grind. And it's like starting again. You're like, oh my God, they don't know who I am. They said my company name wrong. They said UPRS. That's URPS. So I think that is good because it toughens you up. It's like another hurdle to jump, and what that does for you and the things that you learn, awesome. You'd never regret it. You have to be careful not to invest too much. I think that practically, don't throw good money after bad. If things aren't going well, you cut it, you finish it. I think you can't be silly about growth moves. So it's a delicate balance between kind of learning, enjoying the pain of growing in a new city, but not, if it's not working, just stop after a period of time and move on.
I guess lastly, Matt, what were you involved in the discussions around when deciding to move into Melbourne? What did that look like? Like, what was the catalyst to
I think I think we had a couple of clients that said, we've got a DA in Richmond, can you just fly over and and lodge a DA over there? And I think I just say yes. I go, yeah, I can do that. And afterwards I try and solve the problem. You know, that kind of positive mindset with business is you say yes and then you find a way to do it later.
Yep.
So I said yes. The reality was we didn't have the technical understanding of what happens over there. So when we were getting these little, can you do this DA? And we were saying yes, we were not fully equipped to deal with the technical side. We were okay at it, but we weren't as good as we are here. So then we went, well, let's find someone who's on the ground there that we can build a business around.
Yep.
So that was kind of the model. And we've had a few changes in leadership before we got to our current person, for a variety of different reasons. But over time, the work that you do going over there in marketing and the brand that you've built here over there starts to get traction, which is we've got a long way to go, but there's kind of signs of you know, growth, I guess.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Cool.
I think that's a good way to end because it's a good lesson for me as well. It's appreciate you coming. I know you're busy.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate. Well done.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to another White Collar Tradie podcast. Make sure you're following our podcast sponsor Plumbify on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, and check out their website at www.plumbify.com.au.